Hello, those who are watching the replay, make sure you follow Anchored Media. We also have a open house that's coming up in a few weeks where you can learn more about who we are, what we do, and how to work with us. All of the information for that is right in the description of this video. Hello, everybody that's coming in. I'm going to give folks a second to hop in. We're going to be talking about podcasting today. Hey, Arvilla. Hey, everybody that's coming in, say hello back. Hello, hello. Hey, Tiana. We're going to be talking about podcasting today. So if any of you guys that are here are new or aspiring podcasters, say what's up. Hey, I'm here to talk to y'all. There's also a little question thing that's here. I had put a question box last week and I wanted to go live, but things happen. So I screenshotted them though, and I have some of the podcasting questions that people have up on my computer right here. But for those of you guys who are here live, if you have a podcast related question, put it right here where it says question at the bottom, and then I'll pull it up to answer it for you. Yay, congratulations on recording your first episode. Also, I'm going to give people a minute till we get to the 2:00 mark, my time. Starting my podcast next week. Congratulations. I love podcasting, and we'll get to my story in a second, but I absolutely love it. Again, as you guys are coming in, make sure you follow Anchored Media. If you guys are interested in working with me or my team on launching or growing your podcast, we have an open house coming up in a few weeks. Our open house is just when I introduce our company to you, let you know who we are, what we do, some of the track record that we have with working with podcasters, and let you know about our signature event that we do every year for new podcasters. So you can learn all of that at our open house. I'll post the link in here when I'm done, but you can also just go to Anchored Media's page or click the link in my bio for that. So yeah, it's a free online event, just an opportunity for us to get together live and for me to tell you about the company and what it is that we do. Okay, I see a question coming in. So before I get to speaking, if you have a question, this little question box right here at the bottom, you can put your question there and I'll answer it live. And I have some that was posted last week that I'll go over too. Arvilla, since you're on here, Arvilla is one of our current students in our cohort. Can you do me a favor, Arvilla, and type in anchoredmedia.com/open house? Whatever the link is, I think it's open-house, but if you don't mind, can you copy and paste the link here so I could pin it? All right, so it's 2:00. Let's talk. So today's live is all about the biggest mistake that I see podcasters make. So for those of you guys who do not know me, hello. If you haven't seen me go live, because I don't go live often, what's up? Nice to meet you. My name is Tatum Temia. I am the CEO of Anchored Media and the executive producer. So I oversee all of the podcasts that we manage, all of the work that we do for our shows as well as other shows. I'm the host of my own podcast. I started the company as a podcaster from a podcaster's perspective. And I have my own podcast. It's called Blessed and Bossed Up. I've been podcasting for 5 years now. And thanks to podcasting, I've been able to just do so much. I mean, with my podcast, we have a community, a membership community with hundreds of women who want to grow in faith and business. Of course, I launched Anchored Media since having my podcast, and it's just been the best journey. I did a video on our YouTube channel recently just talking about, is podcasting expensive? And the answer is no. And I remember when I first started podcasting, I spent $40 on a microphone. I spent $20, or it was actually $10 a month for our hosting site. And that was it. That maybe, I don't know, let's say less than $200 for the year, for the whole year investment has had such a huge return. You know, Anchor Media is only 19, 20, 22, 3 years old. And we've worked with over 100 podcasters. Podcasting has just supported so much for me. I've been an entrepreneur for 5 years this year, full time. So I was able to quit my job within the first few months of podcasting and been able to just build my business and build my brand. And now my podcast not only supports a multi-six-figure business model with my company, but it also is a successful and profitable product in and of itself through advertising dollars. And so I'm very passionate about working with podcasters and helping podcasters because podcasting is a medium that just gives you so much opportunity, right? It's an algorithm free space for you to be able to get your information out there, your message out there, and really connect with your audience. So platforms like Instagram, right? Instagram, for example, is trying to compete with TikTok. So they're skewing towards a younger audience, and in order to really play this game on here, you have to do reels, and the goalpost is constantly moving, and you're constantly trying to figure out where it is just when you figured out how to work with the one that was there. And so what I love about podcasting is you don't have to deal with all of that. There's no middleman. There's no puppet master that's controlling who sees what. It's really as organic as it gets on the internet. And that's why I love it. What's the name of your podcast? It's Blessed and Bossed Up. It is, I think the link is in my description or Lord, I was about to say show notes. I'm full podcaster mode. The link is in my bio. Is that what it's called on Instagram? I'm a geriatric millennial. Okay. So all this is too much, but yes, Blessed and Bossed Up. Hey, Tiffany. Tiffany is also one of our former students. So yeah, let's get into just the biggest mistake I see new podcasters make. One thing I love about Anchor Media, my company, myself, and my team is we are a team of marketers, right? So we approach podcasts from a marketing and business development standpoint. And a lot of companies who work with podcasters, they approach things from a creative standpoint. And so we choose to approach things from a strategic standpoint, and then we're as creative as we need to be in order for our strategy to work, if that makes sense. And so what I found with working with a lot of creatives, because I don't consider myself or my team to be creatives, we're strategists. Again, like I said, we are as creative as we need to be in order for our strategies to work. And so a lot of podcasters who start from the creative side, they have this elaborate audio and these beautiful podcast icons and all of these fun, beautiful things that they're doing, but the show is launching to flatness. No listeners or minimal listeners. Everything is beautiful and packaged great. The graphics and all of that is there, but it's not reaching people and it's not converting into income into the businesses that they have going on. And so that's why we have this unique approach, because we want all of the work that you go into creating your podcast. We want you to get a return on investment, and to get that through listenership as well as through people paying for whatever it is that you're offering in your business. We see podcasting as a top of funnel strategy for you to make money in your businesses. If you don't have a business, that's fine. But the great thing about podcasting, even for those who don't have a business, is that you're now building community. And building, whenever you have people, you have profit. Whenever you have people, you have profit. So even if you don't have something to sell right away, even if you don't have your business mapped out and all of that, it's okay. What the podcast now is doing is just allowing you to build trust within your community and build people who are rallying around and agreeing and buying into whatever your message is. So when it comes to the biggest mistake in podcasting, or that new podcasters make, this is a mistake a lot of new business owners make as well, is you don't make sure that your idea is viable. Make sure I say it right. A lot of people don't make sure that their idea is viable. And so viable just simply means position for success. Oh, thanks, Arvilla. Let me pin this. Why it's not letting me pin it? See, this thing know I'm a geriatric millennial. There we go. Okay. Question, do you get to see how many listeners? What do you mean? Do you as the host Or do I, as a listener, get to see how many listeners somebody has? So let me know so I can make sure I'm answering correctly. So yeah, a lot of people don't make sure that their show idea is viable. And another word for that, a lot of people struggle with podcast marketing because the show isn't marketable in the first place. So whenever you are introducing a new product, and a podcast is a product because you can make money from your podcast, and so you have to look at it as such. So people pay me to recommend products, services, whatever on the show, and I get paid for it. So the podcast is a product. And a lot of people launch businesses and shows without making sure that it's viable, to make sure that your idea, what you want to get across, is something that people are actually going to listen to. A lot of people I meet and talk to new podcasters, and usually, okay, I have this idea. I want to talk about this, so I'm going to start a podcast. I want to have a conversation about that, so I'm going to start a podcast. Me and my homegirl, we talk about these things all the time, so we're going to start a podcast. Now, that's great for the initial idea, but you need to make sure that the product, that podcast, is actually viable, because all of that is great, but it's nothing without listeners. Right? So your business or your product, even if I'm selling this pen, it's nothing without sales. So you want to make sure that you're getting listens as when it comes to your show. And the way that you do that is through market research, really coming up with a brand identity that sets your show apart. So when you're thinking of starting a podcast, the first thing that you need to think of, okay, this is my idea. This is what I need to talk about or what I want to talk about. But how do I make sure that this is packaged in a way to where people are going to listen? For example, well, let's take my podcast, for example, Blessed and Bossed Up. I wanted to start a show because I didn't want faith and business to be separate. I wanted to talk about business, and I wanted to talk about God, and I wanted to tell people that God wants to be involved in their businesses. And I wanted to do this in the form of a podcast. So when it came to, okay, that's what I want to do. Now, how do I need to make this viable? I started doing some research. So what are people currently talking about in the faith setting? What are people currently talking about in the business setting? And how can I make sure that my show stands out? So one of the things that I did was I knew that a lot of the business podcasts, because I chose to go into the business category and not the faith category, or religion and spirituality is the name of it. I decided to go into the business category because I wanted to talk to people who weren't necessarily looking for God, for one. And two, I knew that would make the show stand out, because most of the other podcasts are geared towards business conversations and marketing and interviews and all of that. I wanted to go in there with something different. So if someone was actively looking for something to listen to, my audience would know, oh, this is for me. Another thing that we did was I put my photo on the cover. You don't have to do that. That's kind of something a lot of people just do, but it's not something you need to do. And so the reason why I decided to put my picture on the cover of the podcast icon is because a lot of the business podcasts were overwhelmingly white. And I wanted for my people to be like, oh, who is this? Who is this Black girl talking about God and business? And click on it. And so a big part of really understanding if your idea is marketable is you have to understand your audience, and not just demographically, right? Not just they're from this age to this age in this location or whatever, but you need to understand the psychographics of your audience as well. The best place you can be as a podcaster, as a business owner, or anybody that is presenting something to the public, you need to be able to not just know what your audience wants, but you need to be able to anticipate their needs. And whenever you can operate and strategically plan from a place where you can anticipate your audience's needs, you'll always be a step ahead. And that was a big part of why I started podcasting in the first place, is because I knew I wanted to start a business of coaching and consulting in some way. I didn't know we was going to end up on a podcasting side, but I knew I wanted to help people with marketing specifically. My background is in marketing and business development. I have a master's in business. Everyone on my team who works with our podcasters has a marketing background. So we're a team of marketers and business developers, right? And so when I was thinking about what I was going to use in order to introduce whatever business I wanted to start to the public, I had to see what was going on. So at that time, Instagram was a big thing. Blogging was still really big at that time, but I saw that my audience was moving towards podcasting. And I said, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for me to get in a space where my audience is going and be able to really anticipate their needs. And so for you, you have to be so in tune with what your audience wants that you're able to anticipate their needs. So that's something to consider before you launch. Now, this is all before you get on the microphone. And a lot of people go straight to, let me get the mic. Let me get the audio editing software. Let me do all of the logistics things. But what's really going to be able to tell what really is going to be the catalyst to your show being successful or not is that planning, that show development, making sure your product is viable, making sure that your idea is marketable. That's where you need to start. And that's where you need to spend your time. Launching a podcast is easy. You record audio and you upload it to the internet. It is very easy. And anybody that's teaching you that is stealing your money. What's hard is the strategy. And because the strategy is what makes you have to think beyond just those minuscule tasks. And it really forces you to do your research and really understand what you're talking about. So in addition to making sure your show is marketable, the second biggest mistake, and I'm just going to give y'all two for today so I can answer questions, and then I'm going to go live again tomorrow. So the first thing is people's shows aren't marketable in the first place. They don't have that viable product. The second mistake a lot of people make is that their message is not clear. The message is too general. They're rambling as opposed to communicating. If you're going to be a podcaster, you are now a communicator. And communication is not talking. Communication is a cynical process. You have a message that gets sent out that is received by the person who's listening. They provide feedback and it comes back to you, right? And when when the feedback comes back to you, it should be the same message that you put out. If it's a game of telephone, then there was a breakdown in communication somewhere. And so with podcasting, there's no in real time feedback because the stuff is pre-recorded and uploaded. So you have to make sure from your end, when you're planning out your episodes, that you're planning out a message that is communicated effectively to your audience to where they can understand it without you being there to elaborate. If you can communicate a message that hits home with your audience again without you having to be there to explain, oh, I meant this, I meant to say that, or no. However you say it on that episode needs to be how your audience receives it. That means that you're a good communicator. And if there's a breakdown in communication somehow, then that's going to impact your show, whether it's successful. That's going to impact whether your show is successful or not. And a great way to practice this, because again, I hate when people just hop right into it. You really have to take your time because I believe in launching correctly, because every listener that you have counts, and you don't want to lose listens because you're basically figuring it out while you're on the field. So a great way to practice is after you come up with your show and you have the way that you're going to package it to make it marketable, then I want you to start practicing crafting your message. And then after you craft your message, record it, give it to somebody who is in your target audience and ask them if they understood what it is that you were saying. This is how you can practice before you launch. So whenever it's time to introduce your show to the public, you're able to launch correctly and you create advocates from your listeners. Because the number one form of marketing is always going to be word of mouth. We spent zero money on marketing my show. My show has reached over 6 million listens. On a monthly basis, we have about 250 or so thousand downloads a month. We didn't spend money on advertising until maybe 2020. Yeah, like 2020. And even still, that was a one-time spend. And our show just continues to grow from word of mouth. We have people who do, like, instead of book clubs, like pod clubs, discussing the episodes, shows being sent to group chats. I have people who I know personally who are like, look what such and such just, somebody just dropped this in the group chat. It's your podcast. Like, word of mouth is always going to be the number one marketing tool. And people are going to share things that they either really, really love or really, really hate. And the worst place that you can fall is in that they don't care category. Right? Of course, you don't want to be in the hate side, because we see that all the time. Podcasts trending for the host saying something crazy. That's not sustainable. You want people to love and advocate for you. That's what's going to increase your listenership. And that's what's going to allow you to build community that will that will translate into you being able to convert that community into customers for your business. So I just wanted to cover those two things really, really quickly. But I could talk about podcasting all day, and I wanted to answer the questions that you guys have. So let me scroll up because I saw one. And we have an open house coming up. If you want to learn more about Anchored Media and how to work with me and my team on launching or growing your podcast, we have an open house that's coming up in a few weeks. You can register for that on our website and learn more about like our success stories and all of the shows that we worked with. All right, let me see what I missed. So like, you do your podcast and I'm listening. Do you get to see how many people have listened to the podcast that month? Yeah. So analytics software is super important with podcasting. So when it comes to even choosing a host, I suggest choosing a host that has a very user-friendly back end for you, because you're the one that's going to be there tracking everything and uploading stuff. Make sure that they have in-depth analytics and not just general monthly listens. Like, you want to know which episodes perform the best. You want to know how many episodes or how many listens you have per episode, especially when it comes to advertisers. Advertisers want to know how many ears can I expect to hear this ad on this episode after a 30-day period. And because I work with different podcasters, I've worked on the back of a bunch of different hosting sites, and some of them don't tell me that number. And I get frustrated because I'm like, well, this is the number that the host should be tracking in order for them to be able to make money for their show. So why is this number not provided by the podcast host? And part of it is podcasting is a new industry, so everybody's just figuring it out. But you just want to make sure when you're choosing your hosting site that you're choosing one that gives you in-depth analytics, even so that it can inform your business decisions. So for my podcast, we went on a tour in 2019. We went to 4 cities, and we chose the cities based off of where our listenership was. So I know for me, if I want to do anything live, I'm probably going to go to Texas, either Houston or Dallas, because those are like our top areas. I'm definitely going to go to Atlanta, and I have to do something in the DC area. So though I already know on the top of my head, thanks to my analytics, if I want to do something live, and what location to pick based off of what my analytics say. So yes, something else that you can use though, in addition to your host, is Chartable. Chartable was just acquired by somebody. I think it was Spotify. But Chartable is another great platform for you to track your analytics. And they actually do listener retention on their platform, which I really like. So you can, like if somebody started listening on episode 1, you know how many people are still listening on episode 10 that came from episode 1. So as much data as you can get is so important, because it's going to help you be able to drive your decisions and really know what your consumer likes based off of their listener habits on your show. Chartable also tells you if your show charts, because Apple is one of the, biggest distributors of podcasts that does absolutely nothing. They don't tell you if you chart. They don't tell you anything. So Chartable allows you to keep track on if your show hits any Apple charts. So that's how we know my show is pretty consistently in the top 20 in entrepreneurship, pretty consistently top 100 in business overall. We were featured in like the What's Hot category. You know, if you go on Apple, it'll categorize different like shows. So we were like featured in the What's Hot category at one point. A lot of our podcasters chart on Apple Podcasts within their first month of launching. So Chartable just allows us to really get detailed analytics on what's going on. So choose the right hosting platform. And then in addition to that, make sure that you have something like a Chartable that gives you even more data. All right, let me scroll back down. For those of you guys who are joining, if you have questions, put it in the questions thing so that I can answer Will Anchor Media have a retreat this year? Yes, we have one every year, sometimes multiple. There will be one this year that I'm really excited about. Our open house is coming up in a couple of weeks. And so that's when I'll announce the dates of when it is, the details of it, pricing, process, all of that. Going to our open house is the first step to working with us. And a couple things about our retreats. The retreats are invitation only. So I'm a believer. I'm very blunt about that, for lack of a better word, but I'm also very serious about only working with podcasts that support my belief system in a sense. So it doesn't have to be like a preachy show, but I'm not going to work with shows that are gossip based. I'm not going to work with like these shows. You see these guys have these podcasts where they're basically bashing women all day. I'm not doing that. We have a proven track record of increasing listenership, and I'm not going to increase listenerships of ideas that go against our belief system and our core values. And so that's one of the main reasons why our shows or our retreats are invitation only. So step 1 is to come to our open house. Step 2 is after the open house, we release an application to learn more about the podcast, either the idea or the show that's already out there. And then we send out invites based on what we see in the application. Another rule that we have is I don't like to influence ideas like it's your podcast. So people who come to us with ideas, I want to hear something unique in the show. So that's another way that we sometimes don't invite people to the retreat, is if their idea just isn't really that unique. So yeah. Tiffany said, go to the retreat. Yes. It's so amazing. Not only is it a ton of great information, the community is just unmatched. I've had clients who become friends, like from coming to the retreat. Me and my husband just visited and stayed with one of our clients a few weeks ago. And we met from her listening to the podcast and then working with Anchor Media. And now like we're family at this point. So it's just, the community is just unmatched. I know one of our first retreats, one of the ladies got married, and a lot of the women from the retreat were at her wedding. It was just, the community is just amazing. All right, let me go to the questions. When is the open house? It's coming up in April. If you go to anchormedia.com, it has the exact date up there, but it's coming up in a few weeks. So make sure you go there to register so that you get the link and all of that stuff. Do you recommend Buzzsprout? I've been on the back end of Buzzsprout, but I don't remember anything specific. So that could be a good thing because it was nothing that jumped out about them. I think Podbean was the one that I didn't find the number I was looking for. So I didn't like that. And then Lisbon was pretty complicated on the back end. I was able to navigate it, but for someone who's a beginner who may not be tech savvy, it didn't seem too user friendly to me. But Lisbon was just acquired by AdvertiseCast or the other way around, but they just merged together. So that might be a good platform anyway for a strategic standpoint to partner with a company who will be able to supply podcast ads for you. And the great thing about the podcast industry is it's moving so fast. All of these platforms are changing rapidly. Okay, what was the other question? Is it necessary to have a website for your podcasts? No. Yes and no. So let me see how I can make it plain. A website, as far as, let's say you're Blessed and Bossed Up. So let's say blessedandbossedup.com. If it was just a bunch of information about me and why I like or why I started podcasting, all of that, that's not necessarily relevant to have on a website. Where a website becomes useful is when you do things like post the transcripts up there, because what that does is it helps with your SEO. And so people may find your website before they find your podcast. So when it's used as a marketing tool to drive people into your podcast, yes, but you have to know why you're using the website so that you can use it effectively. Thank you, Jasmine. It's April 7th. And is the retreat virtual? Yep, you'll be able to attend online. So anybody who's here who hasn't been able to come in person, you can definitely still come virtually. Things just didn't work out for me to get there. Yeah, if you were invited before, I need to check with the team, because at one point we were doing where if you were invited before and you couldn't come, that you can bypass the application process. Send me an email so I could just go and like familiarize myself with the podcast again, and I'll let you know. We have a few podcasters in here we worked with before. Scholars for the Soul, Arvilla, Tiffany. What's up? All right, so I have a couple of questions too that I saw on the back end that people asked last week. So one of them was, let me see. Oh, yes. So someone asked last time I posted this in my stories. They said, before going live with my podcast, what product or system should I have to monetize from day one? When you go live with your podcast, the one piece that you need to have is something to where you can capture the information of your listeners. So the downside to podcasting is you don't have like a Rolodex of listens, right? You see a number, but you don't have a way to really communicate and engage with your listeners outside of your RSS feed. And so having some type of email list or something that you present on your podcast is going to be very, very beneficial to you, because you want to be able to continue to communicate with your audience. And also, if you're someone whose business, let's say, serves a different demographic than your podcast does, this is also going to be useful for you, because this will allow you to segment your listens. So for example, one of the podcasts that we manage right now, this host has a podcast that's about faith, and just really building a deeper relationship with God and all of that. She offers multiple things within her business, one of which where she helps people develop nonprofits. So the podcast isn't a nonprofit podcast, but that doesn't mean that she can't utilize her podcast audience to funnel people into her business. She just needs to figure out who of her listens are interested in nonprofits so that she can further communicate with them outside of the podcast platform, and so that she can market her services. Let me know if I'm making sense. Give me some hearts if I'm making sense. Thanks, Melanie. Uh-oh, I don't see no hearts. I'm not making sense. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. Woo, it was a delay. My bad. Okay. So now it was her job to figure out who does she need to talk to, or to pretty much take everybody from listens into some type of Rolodex that's specific so that she can sell her nonprofit consulting services. So she works with us to where we market and manage her podcast. So that's one of our new services that we have this year, to where it's our job, or my goal, for the hosts to just talk. The only thing we can't do for you is communicate your message on that podcast. And so what we do is we plan out, if it's a seasonal show, we plan out the seasons, we record the whole season. So we have another recording next week for one of our podcasts. So our team is going to North Carolina to record her whole season. We get everything we need, and the season's going to come out. The marketing is going to go out for it. All of it is going to be set up so the host can just go back to living their life and watch the people come into their business and watch their listenership grow. So we're doing the same thing for this client who helps build nonprofits. So then we, on my team side, had to come up with a strategy to where, how are we going to segment her audience so that she's able to speak to who she needs to speak to? Because what's going to happen is, if she keeps talking about nonprofits too much, she's going to put off the people who are not there for that, right? So we don't want to do that either. So the strategy we came up with, I don't know if I want to tell our secrets, but we came up with the strategy. Let me be vague. We came up with the strategy to where we now have a specific offer on her podcast that's able to segment her email list into specific buckets. So now as she does her email marketing and reaching out to people and offers and all of that, she now knows exactly who she needs to talk to about what. But if you're starting a show, you need to have something where you can give value to your audience. And then in exchange, they give you their email or contact information or whatever so that you can further communicate with them from there. But that's something, even again, if you're not selling anything, you definitely need to have something that you're offering them. Because God forbid if the podcast just deletes. And this has happened before where my show just deleted. I ain't do nothing. Nobody on my team did nothing. The show just was gone. And it came back. It was no impact or anything like that, but it came back. But if it would have stayed that way for a long time, how would I be able to communicate with my audience, right? Without having this email list. So just any way that you can gather your people on multiple platforms would be best. And the best complement to podcasting in that sense would be your email list. Any other podcast questions? I think I answered all of these. Okay, let me go back to this list. So this is a question I get all the time. The best tips on marketing your podcast. Let me tell you where you don't need to go first when it comes to podcasting. Social media. It won't hurt, but it's not the best use of your time to go straight to Instagram telling people about your podcast. That's not where you need to go. What you need to prioritize when it comes to your podcast is SEO, which is like metadata, ID3 tags. This is essentially search engine optimization for podcasters. That's where your marketing focus needs to be. A lot of people don't want to go this route because it doesn't give you the likes or the congratulations and all of that validation that a lot of people look for. But this is what's going to give you them listeners. Okay. People are constantly searching for podcasts. So a good use of your time will be to make sure that you've done an adequate keyword search. You're adding those keywords to the audio file. So when people are actively searching for your content, they find you. When people are searching in their search engines for podcasts to listen to, they find you. When people are searching on the web for whatever category or subject matter you speak on, they find you. People are actively searching. Even with the advancement of voice search, so like Alexa, and I'm not going to say Apple Girl name because she's going to pop up and mess up my stream, but Apple Girl is what we'll call her. Whoever Google's assistant is, everything is going towards that. And so, again, that's why it's important to prioritize SEO for your show, because you need to make sure that your stuff is found when people are looking for your type of content. With Instagram or using social media, you're just going to get caught up in beating the algorithm and put in all of this work that's not going to really show you the return on listeners that you may think it will. A good platform, though, that complements your podcast is YouTube, because YouTube is a search engine, and studies show a lot of people actually watch podcasts on YouTube as opposed to just listening. So a good complement, if you want to be on another platform, will be YouTube for sure. But Instagram and all of that, a lot of our clients are very happy to see that they don't have to spend a lot of time on Instagram to see their listeners grow. Yes, SEO and word of mouth. And then also making sure your show is marketable and positioned right. You know what I mean? So if somebody is searching through that category, you want your show to stand out to where they're like, oh, let me listen to this. Let me see what that person has to say. So all of that stuff works together. Okay, I saw a new question come in. Should your initial product service be a low ticket item? My suggestion is never offer anything that's paid on your podcast directly. Whatever your offer is, it needs to be free. and you need to get their email so that you can further communicate with them to get to the paid point. So the podcast is a top of funnel strategy. So the purpose of your podcast is to get people into the funnel. If you offer something that's paid directly on the show, it leaves too much of a gray area. You know what I mean? It leaves too much on the table. If you offer something that's free, it's a low risk for somebody to just opt into it and, get that value or whatever. And then you're able to further talk to them, and you're able to further nurture them up until they become a customer. But if you offer something paid and somebody just dismisses it when they might just need a little bit more clarity, they might just have a couple of questions, there may be other ways that you can nurture them, but you just don't know now because you didn't give them a low risk way for them to opt in. So always offer free things on the podcast. And not even only when you're selling stuff either. Don't be the person that only calls when they want something, right? Offer your audience things of value just because. And a lot of times that will inform your decision on what should be your next product or service. You may notice, man, a lot of my audience, it has opted into this. So this is telling me that this is something that I need to create. So before you even spend the time creating a service or writing a book or whatever it is, planning the event, just throw some things out there to your audience and see what they show the most interest in and allow that to inform what you continue to build on. But yeah, always something for free to the podcast audience. Always. If you already have a YouTube channel, should you create one solely for the podcast or can the podcast recordings be uploaded on the personal YouTube channel? It depends on what your goals are. If your podcast is something that supports what you're already doing and it's not like something that's totally separate, then just add like a playlist on YouTube and have the podcast episodes go there. So like for example, Anchored Media has a separate YouTube than my personal YouTube channel because it's a whole business and a whole thing in and of itself. And so we may put things on my channel from time to time to get people over because I have more subscribers and stuff like that. But it's a whole channel in and of itself with its own content and its own purpose. But Blessed and Bossed Up doesn't need its own YouTube channel, right? It's just an extension of me. So it has just a playlist on my personal channel. You're welcome. Do we have any other podcast questions? Yeah, I know I don't go live often, so I want to make sure I get all y'all questions answered. All right, let me see if it's one more on this list before I hop off. Oh, this is another big question. So is it the same with an Instagram page? Yeah, so with Instagrams, I don't know about y'all, but I don't like managing multiple Instagrams. I just don't. I'm only logged in on this one. The other ones, our team does that. So when it comes to Instagrams, I would suggest just putting your podcast on yours. The reason why Blessed and Bossed Up for us has a separate Instagram is because it's a whole community in and of itself. And the conversation is different on there, right? So we look at Anchored Media, Tatum Temia, Blessed and Bossed Up as 3 separate brands. They have different colors, they have different messages, and they have different tones. So Blessed and Bossed Up is all about community. It's not about me. I don't care if folks know what I look like when it comes to Blessed and Bossed Up because it's not about me. It's about giving people the tools and the resources they need to go back and seek God for themselves. So on that, the reason why it's separate is because I didn't want it to become about me. So even on that page, you only see my face if I'm talking. Other than that, it's pictures of groups, other photos, pictures from events. You never really see me like that on there for a reason. And so because of the purpose being that building community, and also the messaging that I want to get across just under my name is different. I want to talk about, having it all, and being uncompromising, and having the family life and the business and all of that. Those are the things that I want to talk about. And because my messages are different now than the podcast is separate. But for you, Tiffany, and what you're doing, I would keep it all right under you. Go ahead and just ask. If I answered it, I'll answer it differently to where I answer your questions, but also provide something new. Okay, so a question that I get often is frequency of episodes. This is like a myth to where people think that if you have a seasonal show versus a weekly show, then somehow the seasonal show is going to have less listens. And that is not true. One bit. The same way that you watch TV shows and they have the finales and they go away, and you go back and you get excited when it comes back, it's the same thing with podcasts. So when it comes to the frequency of release that you're going to have with your show, this is where you really get the opportunity to choose what fits best for you. Right? Creating a brand or a business or anything, it's about shared value. It's about giving your audience what they want, but also including what you want to do in there too, and just really meeting in the middle. So if you cannot maintain a weekly show, don't do a weekly show. Do seasonal. Do bi-weekly. Whatever it is, I just say start as you can maintain it. The inconsistency is a podcast killer. So if you cannot keep up with weekly, do it bi-weekly. If you can't keep up with bi-weekly, do it seasonal. We're doing a show now that releases, it's going to release seasonal, but throughout the season, the episodes come out bi-weekly. Because that's what works best for the host, and the audience will adjust. And there are other things that you can do to just further nurture your audience through the off season. People are constantly finding the show. And that's why we do SEO really is our main approach to marketing the podcast anyway, because people are actively searching for things every single day. So you are going to have people who've been listening from day one and who are on track and everything like that. But you're going to find a lot of people who are just finding out about the show during the off season. So again, when it comes to how often your show comes out, this is where you can really just choose what works best for you and that you can maintain. Your audience will absolutely adjust. And through your marketing, you can supplement through that off season. Is promoting your podcast more important than consistently producing your podcast? Well, having a show to promote matters. So I think they both hold equal importance. So when you say producing, do you mean editing, or do you mean like putting one out? I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Let's see if I had any other questions. But yeah, getting the content out is definitely extremely important. Oh, recording and editing, not necessarily releasing. Well, making sure that the podcast sounds good, it should be your number one priority, because with audio, because you're not being stimulated in any other way, all of those audio mistakes are a lot louder than they would be if somebody was looking at a video. So a lot of the times when I'm taking a YouTube video and making it a podcast, I have to do a lot of editing work, because I didn't hear the fan in the background when I was watching the video because I was listening and seeing. But I heard that fan super loud and it was getting on my nerves when I wasn't visually stimulated anymore, and I had to get that fan out the way, right? And keep that in mind with future videos. So audio is number one. You want to make sure that your audio sounds great. And again, the marketing piece is less about promoting it, because you have to promote it, but more so just make sure your show is positioned to be found. And then when it comes to promoting it, and I don't think I talked about this before, why a lot of people make the mistakes of going straight to Instagram and things like that to promote their podcast. The best place to promote your podcast is on other podcasts. because now you're talking to people who listen to podcasts in your particular category. So if I have a new show that we're putting out, the first place I'm going to go is other shows that we worked on or in our community that appeal to that audience. That is a better use of our time and our efforts than social media and all of that. So so after you make sure your audio is good, that's number one. Number two is making sure your show is positioned to be found by people who are looking for it. And then when you're promoting, choose platforms of active podcast listeners of your type of content. Okay, I see another question. It came in. Oh, wait, I did that one already. How valuable is the podcast cover? And what do you found entices people to click? So the podcast cover is important. Mistakes is too much words. Simple and clear is always better. One of the things we do with like our Find Your Voice Academy, really all of our clients, is if their podcast cover is not great, we change it. A big mistake that we see that we have to change usually is there's a lot of like text. Like it's the such and such podcast hosted by this person available on these platforms. Well, we don't need to see that it's available on Stitcher and Podcasts or Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We already here. We know it's available, right? So let's take that out. Too much text is a big thing. Anytime the show looks, the icon looks amateur-like, I think it leaves a bad impression. A lot of people are very visual, even if they're listening to podcasts. That's why video podcasts are so important. So you just want to make sure that your art is clear and it's clean. Something that might be important if I mentioned this a little bit earlier with my podcast story, because I wanted to stand out in the business category. I put my picture on there because I wanted people to see that a Black woman does this podcast, because that's something that would be of interest to my audience. And so that was the rationale behind that. So any way that you can make sure that it's clean, that it's speaking to who it needs to speak to, that's what matters. Also, don't underestimate the podcast name. People should know what your show is about by looking at the icon and reading the name. I love our marketing manager, Kyla, has a podcast, and I love her show. Her show is called the Organize My Thoughts podcast. There's no further explanation for you to know what that show is about. As simple as possible is always better. When it comes to names, I'll always go back and forth with our clients because they have this deep meaning about something and they want to call the podcast that. Be very clear about what you're talking about. There should be no guesses, because at this point you want, with the name, the description, the icon, all of that is, you want who is supposed to listen to click on it. So talk to them, so Organize My Thoughts podcast. Clear. Perfect. Perfect. Whoever needs their thoughts organized is clicking that podcast. Do you recommend frequently updating the trailer? Yes. If your seasonal show, update it to where it's reflective of what the season is going to be. If it's a weekly show, update it maybe once a year to let people know what to expect this year from the podcasts. Yeah, I would do it like that. If we already attended Find Your Voice Academy and haven't launched our podcast, does Anchored Media help launch, or what other services do you offer? So if you've gone through, did you go through the academy that's after the retreat? I don't remember. If you attended the event but didn't join the academy, the next step would be to join the academy, which is our 4-month program that follows the retreat, where we take everything that was taught, because the retreat is a ton of information. So we take all of that information that you learned and we turn it into a plan to get your show launched. So if you haven't done that, that would be the next step. And then, just because I'm saving this live, Another service that we offer for podcasts that are already out is our marketing and management service, where we handle all the production. So again, we only want our hosts to talk. We handle all the production. We handle the strategy. So we take a deep dive into your show. We take a deep dive into your business offerings, and we create a plan that's going to seamlessly take those listeners into your business and your funnel. We had, like I said, all of the editing, so you don't have to edit the podcast. We post it. So record, that's it. And we handle all of the pieces with that. So we do all the marketing for it to increase listens. We track analytics and do analytics reports quarterly. So we do a lot. We treat the show as if it's our show. We do everything that we can to make it reach as many people as possible and convert as best as possible for the host. So to get more information on the Academy, you can reach out to admin@anchoredmedia.com. Our academies go with the retreats. So this retreat is going to be, I think it's in July or August, and then we'll have an academy go through the end of the year. And so you can only come when there's a cohort going on. So yeah, if you email admin@anchoredmedia.com, she'll let you know when the next cohort is, the cost, and all of that. Thank you. If someone changed their podcast name, do you recommend starting a new RSS feed or just telling listeners about the change? Tell listeners about the change and change the name. Don't start a whole new show, because you're going to lose those people that you left over there, and every listen counts. So just switch it over. Let them know what's going on, and everybody new won't know. On your website, the e-course versus Find Your Voice Academy, how does the information differ? It differs a lot. Our online course, I talk about show development, marketing, monetizing. I think it's one more module. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's me teaching you in 4 different modules everything that you need to launch and grow your show. The retreat is that times 1,000. It's not just me speaking. So we have marketers come in. So we have our marketing manager for Anchor Media. We have another marketer who comes in to teach you just about branding and all of that stuff. We have my lawyer, Nakia, who comes and talks about trademarks, intellectual property, copywriting, all of that. What else? We have so many different sessions for the retreat. It's way more than what we offer in the course. And like I said, we have way more speakers. We go way more into depth. We have activities that we do. So it's a lot more hands-on. And like Tiffany said, plus that community, you can't beat the community, because the people who are going to market your podcast and tell people about it is in the community. The people who can post your show in their RSS feed and tell folks that it's coming out is in the community. The people you can do interview swaps where you interview them and they interview you. That's in that community. So you can get the information. You can't beat the community that comes from the retreat. And then also you get more information at the retreat with our guest speakers. All right. I think I answered all the questions. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. If you have any questions that come up, DM me. I'm going to go live again tomorrow. And so I'll cover another topic with podcasting and answer questions there as well. I've come close with a few on my cohort, Divine Connections. Yes. I love to see the relationships that form, as a result of the retreat. And like I said, I formed some great relationships as a result of the retreat. Rosalind, who's one of our clients, she came to the retreat, the academy. She's just an Anchor Media OG. She's now one of the hosts within the society, within our community there. Charlotte, same thing. Like I said, she and her husband have become like family to me and my husband. We go stay with them in Florida. They come stay with us in Maryland, and that's family at this point. And we just meet. I've met some amazing people that have come through our programs. And then just people really connect with each other and build those beautiful relationships. You just really can't beat that. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope I answered all your questions. Again, Anchor Media, we have an open house that's coming up in a few weeks where I go into detail about our retreat as well as our service that I said with the marketing and managing of podcasts. That's when applications open for our next retreat, so you can apply to join that. And if you click the link in my bio, or if you go to anchormedia.com/open house, you'll be able to register there. And that's it. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.